If this is how his presidency has begun, how worried are you about the way it will continue and, worst of all, the way it might end?
I think as far as continuing is concerned, I think we have to keep our seatbelts on for the foreseeable future. There will be shocks, there will be reverberations all around the world, including in the bilateral relationship. And I think we will have to ride it out as best as we can. We have to come to terms with the fact that the comfort zone that we all lived in has been thrown to the winds. And today it is every man for himself, every country for himself, and there are no rules of the game.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Tomorrow, Donald Trump will have been president of America for a month. What has been his impact on the world during these 30 days? Are governments from Europe to Latin America to the Middle East justified in feeling stunned and even shell-shocked? And in this potential turmoil, how has India fared? Those are the key issues I shall raise today with India's former ambassador to the USA and Israel and former High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, Navtej Sarna. Mr. Sarna, tomorrow Donald Trump will have been president for one full month. To misquote Eliot, there's a view that during these 30 days, he hasn't just begun with a bang, but with a series of policy reversals and changes which are almost like a nuclear explosion. Are you one of those who are reeling and shell-shocked?
Well, thank you, Karan. I think to carry on your metaphor, I think if Eliot said that this is the world ends with a bang, here Trump has begun with a bang, and it's the world which is whimpering. So you can hear a long whimper all around the world with what has happened in these 30 days. Frankly, when you say 30 days, it doesn't seem like 30 days. It seems like a very long time, and that speaks for the kind of turmoil that has been unleashed all around us. Yes, I think there are very worrying signs at the moment. We have to see how things pan out. But, I think we are talking about the world. But first of all, I think you have to see what's happening within the United States. I think within the United States, there's complete turmoil at the moment. His DOGE under Elon Musk is running riot. Entire agencies are being obliterated. Thousands of people have lost their jobs. There's a huge amount of reversal of all kinds of policies. There's a complete, elimination of DEI. So Trump has unleashed not only an international turmoil, but he is doing things within the United States, first of all, which are going to leave a huge impact on the entire country. And these are not just immigration and trade and tariffs and economy and agencies, it's also culture. He wants to leave the stamp of Trump on the entire culture. There's a massive culture war against the woke, for instance, the removal of DEI, another thing, and so on and so forth. He's taken over the Kennedy Center, removing the entire board. Now, these are iconic things which are being taken over. So there is a lot being done in these 30 days. And as far as the world is concerned, yes, if you like, we can go around the world and see what the impact is. But broadly speaking, yes, there is a huge impact on the transatlantic relationship. There's a huge
Let's come to the world in a moment's time. Let me sum up
Okay,
what you said about the impact internally on America. You're
sure.
suggesting that what he's done is to deliberately, consciously, and very meticulously shake up the country internally.
Oh, entirely, entirely. He said it during his campaign, and I think he is delivering on most of what he said. The difference here is that this time, and again we compare with Trump 1.0, this time he knew what he was coming in with. He had the team already set in position, and frankly, he is like unplugged and unchained. He doesn't believe that there's anything holding him back this time. He is flouting not only norms, which he did last time, but also laws. And even
Then
if they are running counter to the Constitution.
let's then, against that background of what he's done internally in America, come to details of what he's doing externally as far as the world outside America is concerned. And let's start with Europe. Traditionally, the transatlantic alliance is America's closest alliance. But Trump has gone ahead and held talks with Putin, who Europe has cold shouldered for 3 years. He had a 90-minute telephone conversation with him last week. His Secretary of State and National Security Advisor flew yesterday to Saudi Arabia to hold talks with Russian officials, including Foreign Minister Lavrov. Europe, and in particular Ukraine, have not only been consciously and deliberately kept out of the talks, but Vice President Vance has told Europe that the real threat it faces is not Russia and China, but from within Europe in terms of Europe's own policies and behavior. What do you make of all of that treatment of Europe?
I think this is a multi-level attack on Europe by the United States. The transatlantic relationship in many ways has been taken for granted by the world and certainly by Europe. And ever since the end of the Cold War, American presidents have been trying to convince Europe to step up to the plate and spend more on defense and take care of themselves also, with little success. Trump, frankly, sees Europe as a set of, decadent countries in terminal decline. And he has said that there are no soft words, there are no nice encomiums being exchanged here. We are going to put things on the table, and his team, like Rubio, etc., are reflecting that. Vance, particularly, was sent in and to the speech that you referred to has shocked Europe because he's attacked them on their censorship, on their democracy, on their immigration policies, on their economic policies. And of course, defense spending is a huge demand. So the message going out is that the United States is not going to be the prime guarantor of security for Europe. And deterring Russia is a European problem, not an American problem.
Let's
Having
take that
said
up.
that, if you know, what you mentioned, that he has then gone over the heads of NATO and talked to Putin and set up this meeting in Saudi Arabia with his officials.
Let's take up that military message specifically. According to Reuters, Trump administration officials have made it clear that Europe has to take primary responsibility for security in Europe because America, and I'm now quoting, has other priorities such as border security and countering China. That's beginning to sound as if Trump could be turning his back not just on Ukraine, but on the whole of Europe.
Well, I think this is part of it, except at the moment we don't know how much will the turning of the back mean. Will it mean a withdrawal, for instance, in the extreme case of nuclear guarantees? Will it mean a withdrawal of all American soldiers from the continent of Europe? Or will it simply mean that you step up to the plate and spend 5% of your GDP? And is it a message to galvanize Europe into activity? Or is it goodbye for a very long time? So
The
this
fact,
is
the
still
fact
open.
that these questions themselves arise naturally from his comments and his behavior must be deeply perturbing and disturbing for Europe.
I think they are completely shell shocked, to use your word, Karan. I mean, they are shell shocked. They called an emergency meeting. Macron called an emergency meeting of NATO and many European leaders. Of course, there are some among European leaders who are not particularly bothered. For instance, the Hungarians, the Orban, or the Italian Meloni, etc. But most of Europe, and this now I'm even including the United Kingdom, is worried about this, and they're panic stricken because they know that they have to do something, and they are not united.
You
They
know,
are
you
not
referred
united
to
on what will happen in Ukraine, and they
you
are
re-
feeling very cheesed off that they are not in Saudi Arabia.
you referred to the meeting that Macron held on Monday. It was an emergency meeting with the Dutch, the Germans, the British, and several others there. He's got a second emergency meeting happening today, Wednesday, with the Norwegians, the Belgians, the Swedes, and others coming. Do you get the feeling that Europe is not just stunned, they are panicky? And would
They
you
are panicky.
And who do you think are rightfully
because
panicking?
they are panicky because they do not have the wherewithal to handle Russia on their own. And they are also panicking because ultimately, whatever deal is cut while they are not on the table might imply that they have to send in peacekeeping forces or some kind of multinational force into Ukraine. Now, what kind of a force that's going to be, who is going to contribute? Again, they are divided. The United Kingdom, for instance, has said, yes, we will send, but with the US backstopping. There are others are more wary, like the Germans, the Poles, the Spanish. They are extremely worried. They are very wary of this. Sweden will probably put in soldiers. So they are not. They have to get their act together. And of course, today you're also seeing post Saudi Arabia meeting, the press conferences, press statements that are being given by the Americans say in very vague terms that we will, keep everybody informed, we'll carry everybody with us. But so far, there is nothing to show that that is going to be the case.
This means that the most critical, the closest alliance that America has had for 70 years, the Transatlantic Alliance, is pretty close to being disrupted and fractured.
Well, yes, it is. How deeply it is fractured, as I said, we will have to wait to see. Is it simply a strong message to jolt Europe into quick action, quick production, or is it going to be something which is going to be long-standing?
Let's then, against the background of the disruption and the dislocation and the fracturing, to use your phrase, that's happened in Europe, come to what Trump is doing in Israel Gaza. There, Trump has repeatedly said he intends to take over Gaza and convert it into the Riviera of the Middle East. On one occasion, King Abdullah of Jordan was standing beside him in the White House and was completely silent, shocked and silent, unable to say anything. President Sisi of Egypt, it's announced, has reportedly cancelled his visit to Washington for fear of what Trump will say or do. The only ones who are smiling are Netanyahu and his far right colleagues like Ben Gvir and Smotrich. As you see it, is Trump finding a way of resolving the Israel Palestine problem, or is he exacerbating it, whether that's being done deliberately or without realizing it?
Well, I think, Karan, the answer to your question depends upon what do you mean by quote unquote resolving the Israel Palestinian problem. If you're going to resolve it by removing one side entirely from the equation, then he's doing what he has to do. But if you want to resolve it in terms of historical reality, in terms of international law, in terms of the rights of the Palestinian people, then I'm afraid his actions are deeply disturbing and exacerbating the situation. In those terms, his statements from the most powerful pulpit in the world actually amount to a policy of naked land grab, ethnic cleansing, and it's a crime against humanity. So I think none of this is going to help. Yes, the best spin you can put on this is that this is now galvanized the Arabs to come up with a counter plan. But at what cost? By saying that you're going to remove 2.3 million people from a land where they have lived, which is home to them. So this is something which will have reflections all around the world. Wherever there is a territorial dispute, there can be the Trump example. Okay, let the United States take it over, or let somebody take it over and bring peace. This is attacks the fundamentals of relations between countries and international law. So at the moment, I'm afraid I don't see Israeli United States actions helping out resolve the conflict in a proper way. The Team Trump actually reflects, echoes the views of the far right of Israel.
Let me ask
And they are,
Let me
sorry.
ask a specific question about Marco Rubio. As you know, 48 hours ago, he was in Jerusalem, and there, standing beside Prime Minister Netanyahu, he spoke about eradicating Hamas. It wasn't a casual throwaway comment, it was a deliberate, forceful statement made with great passion by the man. Does that suggest to you that phase two of the Israel Hamas ceasefire deal, and phase two is when the ceasefire becomes permanent and Israel withdraws completely from Gaza, that phase two is unlikely to happen?
Well, at the moment, it's a very fragile situation. The ceasefire itself is fragile. Which way the phase two will be negotiated is at the moment very much up in the air. Eradicating Hamas is a Bibi Netanyahu belief and objective, which was reflected by Rubio, but it goes counter to the fact that you need to get a second phase going and then a third phase. Because if you are waiting for total victory, then you're not going to have a second phase. Because
Now,
the Hamas during the last, you would have seen those pictures of hostages being released, the backdrop. Hamas put up a backdrop saying, "We are the day after." And the next time they put up a backdrop saying, "No migration except to Jerusalem." So the fact remains that, eradicating Hamas at the moment means a prolongation of war, which means no second phase. So I think these things are still have to be balanced out.
again, standing beside Netanyahu in the White House, Trump has also suggested that he could recognize Israel's annexation of the West Bank and do so in the next couple of weeks. If that happens, it would completely scupper all chances of a two-state solution. And that would be not just a reversal of US's own traditional, some would say, cherished policy, but it would be a reversal of the position that most of the world stands by.
Yes, and I think, frankly, for most of the world, mouthing the two-state solution is actually salving their own conscience, because the two-state solution has been steadily kicked into the long grass by one act or the other, and annexation of the West Bank will be the ultimate nail in the coffin of that idea. At the moment, again, as I said, Team Trump has made these statements. You have his ambassador to the United States, in the United Nations, Elis Stefanak, saying that Israel has a biblical right to all of the West Bank. So I think if you keep, and then they have also removed sanctions on the settlers. Even yesterday, I think there was a news report that 1,000 new units have been sanctioned for settlements. So each bit of this, eats away at the land which would form a state. So ultimately, I think all of this is leaving virtually very little scope for a two-state solution, even if the Israelis were to accept it, even in principle.
Now, Rubio has also said, and I'm quoting him, behind every terrorist group, behind every act of violence, behind every destabilizing activity, behind everything that threatens peace and stability is Iran. In response, Netanyahu, who was standing beside him, said of Iran, "We can and will finish the job." Do you get the feeling that perhaps subtly and cleverly, Trump is saying to Netanyahu, if you want, go ahead and bomb Iran's nuclear facilities, go ahead and bomb Iran's military targets. I'm providing you with the 2,000-pound bombs that Biden held back to do precisely that.
Well, I think this is a more complicated question. Certainly, Netanyahu is dangling that possibility before American presidents and saying, help me do it. Let's finish the job, quote unquote. And the fact is that Iran is today militarily and strategically much weaker than it was 2 years ago, with the loss of what they call the Ring of Fire, the proxies of Iran, debilitated missile defense that it has, and there is very much one set of people who believe that this year Israel will do something of the kind that you are mentioning. But then they come up against the fact that Trump really hasn't given a green signal on that. I mean, there are people in the United States who would say go for it. There are certainly people in Israel who would say go for it, but it will need more than 2,000-pound bunker busting bombs. Bunker busting bombs come in various grades and levels. And it is believed that the Iranian nuclear facilities are so deep that to make a real impact, they would need something like a 30,000-pound, bunker busting bombs, which brings in who's going to carry them, which aeroplane is going to carry them. Usually it's done by B-52s and B-1s and B-2s. B-52s are mothballed and will take a long time coming back. Whether the Americans will give B-2 bombers, whether the Americans will extend aerial refueling facilities, if somehow Israeli planes are engineered to do this, whether Americans will provide the intelligence, because there is another track that Trump is following, and that is through Saudi Arabia.
But the truth is that if the questions you're raising are being asked, and they will be asked most poignantly of all in Tehran, then you're creating turmoil, you're creating uncertainty, you're creating, again, anxiety, tension, and another form of panic.
I think we have to get used to the fact that while Mr. Trump is in the White House, anxiety is going to be a default position. So I think we shouldn't worry too much about that. The fact is that Saudi Arabia, Trump has said it, that he prefers a deal rather to bombing the hell out of Iran. So he prefers the deal through Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis are stepping up and probably wanting to be in the center of everything.
Now, whilst we've been recording, it's been brought to my attention that the BBC has reported the following about the outcome of the discussions that the American team had with the Russian team in Riyadh yesterday. They've agreed to appoint high level teams to negotiate peace in Ukraine, and that clearly means Europe and Ukraine won't be involved with those high level teams when they do the negotiating. Secondly, they've agreed to send back ambassadors and to improve the relationship and build the relationship between the two countries. In addition, Russia has said, but I don't know whether America has agreed, that no NATO troops can be acceptable as peacekeepers in Ukraine. That scuppers the British proposal of sending British troops to Ukraine as peacekeepers. And Russia has also said, this time out of Moscow, that they don't want simply Ukraine to be denied membership of NATO. NATO must disavow the commitment made in Bucharest in 2008 that they will admit at some unspecified date Ukraine to NATO. So Russia has upped its demands, whilst America has agreed with Russia to create high level teams to negotiate peace in Ukraine, excluding Europe, excluding Ukraine, and they will consider sending back ambassadors and rebuilding the relationship between the two countries. That is going to, as an outcome, worry Europe hugely.
Well, I don't have the inputs that you have, Karan, but I'm not surprised at all with what has been said. There is already, even before this meeting took, there was a sense of appeasement of Russia. There was a 90-minute conversation by Trump. Peter Hegseth gave away two major negotiating points in his first statement, that there will be, U.S. troops will not be there, and Ukraine will not enter NATO. So that's, they had already given away two major
And
things.
also that it's unrealistic to expect that Ukraine will get back all the territory it's lost. That too.
That of course, the territory, of course. So I'm not surprised if, Putin will up the ante. I'm surprised that he's, according to what you said, that he stopped at the Bucharest bit. I was thinking that he might actually go back to 1997 and say, you take NATO back to the lines of 1997, because today he is in a very powerful position. He knows he's going to get territory out of Ukraine, so he's going to go the full way and get everything that he wants. So, and Europe no longer matters, and the Ukrainians are that much stuff under the bus.
And the paradox is that although in the last few weeks these may have receded into the background because Ukraine and Gaza have taken center stage, but Trump's threats to Greenland, to Canada, to the Panama Canal remain very much on the table. If you take everything that we've discussed all together, don't you undeniably get the feeling he is determined to shake up the world and he's doing it vigorously?
Oh, absolutely. He's doing it because he's not going by any basic principles which are cast in stone. For instance, that there is American European unity. For instance, that you cannot touch another country. So he is saying, I will get what I want on the terms I want. We didn't even mention the fact that they want 500 billion worth of minerals in Ukraine. And Scott Bessent actually went and made the proposals, only that the Ukrainians have pushed back. And now, that is gone into another negotiation. But again, so he wants the Greenland minerals. He wants, control over the Panama Canal. And he threw in this Gaza proposal. I don't think it was a negotiating tactic. In fact, Karan, I wrote about it. I think it is he has two aspects to his personality. One is the reality show host, and one is the real estate developer. And very often it's one or the other, or sometimes both, which are at play when he makes these statements. So I think in the Gaza case, it was the real estate developer's desire when he saw the blue Mediterranean lapping at the shores of Gaza that here, this is a good place. So I think many of these things are going to remain on the table. What is disturbing is that soon you'll find other countries doing it. There are reports coming out of Taiwan already that they are very, very scared.
Can
Who's
I
going to
just
stop the
pick up on that?
Chinese now?
Can I pick up on your description? He's both, you say, the reality show host and the real estate developer. Reality show hosts delight in keeping their audience wonderstruck, gasping, surprised, and on edge. And he's doing all of that with the world. Real estate developers look at places like Gaza as real estate to develop. As you said, the blue waters of the Mediterranean make you think of a Riviera. To hell with the people who live there.
Quite right. Because they are poor people, and they can be shoved away somewhere.
Now, on top of all of this, as if there was room for more, Trump has also spoken of organizing summits with Putin and President Xi. Could he possibly have some sort of G3 in mind? And if he does, how would you respond to that?
Well, I don't know if we want to call it a G3 because there will be tensions no matter how close they come to each other. But certainly, I think we are looking at uh, a new Yalta, a kind of division of the world into zones of influence. Particularly if this Ukraine deal goes the way it is heading, he likes to play with the big boys, and the rest doesn't matter really. So here, yeah, he can tell the Russians, okay, you take care of this, let's not bother each other about this. The Chinese, you take care of you know your stuff, and you want this, okay, I'll give you this. So is that kind of deal making, zones of influence, a big boys club, which I won't be surprised is I think it's his natural habitat.
But that would be very bad news for India. If Trump in any way sends a message to Beijing, you take care of your part of the world, we are very definitely in that part of the world.
Well, we have to be aware of that possibility. We have to be aware of the possibility that US-China relations in the present situation are not going to be, may not be adversarial forever. What is going for us in this particular equation is that America took a long time to build a consensus that China is its main strategic rival. And even if Mr. Trump wants to make up with Xi and put out a great trade deal and some sort of a deal, there may be a huge amount of things which will put a limit to cooperation. For instance, the entire technological paradigm is different and is contested. So, there will be other areas in which despite personal bonhomie and, handshaking and a summit, etc., there will be limits to that cooperation. And that, I think, is good news for us. But yes, broadly speaking, we have to be aware And I think we are aware. Nobody expects the Americans to come and solve our China problem.
Okay.
It certainly gives it just the fact that US and China are adversaries gives an added plank to the India US dimension, but it's not at the heart of the India US relationship.
Now, bizarrely, Mr. Sarna, Trump has also spoken about cutting military budgets in half, not pruning them, but literally slashing them by 50%. Now, America spends pretty close to $1 trillion a year on its military. Even if America is willing to cut its budget by half, which would annoy the American military establishment hugely and corporate America enormously because their profits would be slashed, do you think there's any possibility that the Chinese and the Russians with much smaller budgets would be willing to cut theirs by half?
Well, I think that that it's one thing to say these things, another thing to get countries like China and Russia to follow suit. This would require very detailed and very prolonged negotiations, which are not happening. And I think even within the United States, you'll have opponents to cutting the defense budgets, very strong opponents. For instance, Mitch McConnell in the Senate, he is known to be readying himself for a fight on this. So I think it's easier said than done. And you will find chaotic, confused, and contradictory messages coming out of the US administration. And that's exactly what's happening.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Against this background, let's come to our own Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Washington. Both the media and the BJP have deemed it to be a great success. Do you share that view?
Well, I think it was an important visit, and to a certain extent, it was extremely successful because one test is that if you can keep the story of the relationship on the rails, and that is the only evidence I have is the joint statement. I think much of the defense, the strategic, the technology relationship, which has been built over several administrations, not just the Biden administration, has been retained. And it has, in fact, been upgraded to some extent. It has been repackaged to some extent. So I think that part is successful. The second part that I think is more of a holding operation, and that is the trade part. He announced reciprocal tariffs when Prime Minister was in the United States, but I think that will work for everybody, and how reciprocal tariffs will take place will be another matter. But what we have done has bought time to negotiate the tariffs after 6 months.
Let me raise with you two concerns that perhaps haven't got the attention they deserve in the media. First of all, India has committed to buy increased quantities of US oil and gas. But the cost of transportation from America, and you probably know this better than me, is considerably more than it is from West Asia. So even if the price of American oil is the same as the price of Kuwaiti or Iraqi or Iranian oil, the cost of transportation would make a critical difference. Will we therefore end up paying more to buy Trump's goodwill?
Well, I think two things. Let me say it at two levels. One, of course, there is some amount of checkbook diplomacy involved here because Trump hates a negative trade balance for the United States, and India does have a positive trade balance. So, like in Trump's first term, we will make efforts to buy more and therefore offset that trade balance. In terms of oil and natural gas, I am not an expert on the pricing of oil, etc., or I don't even have any knowledge of this, but I do believe it's a very complicated way of doing business. There are swaps and there are particular grades of oil and there are particular refineries which handle only then one particular oil. Uh, all I remember is that we were virtually buying nothing in terms of oil and natural gas from the United States. During Trump's first term, it went up to $4 or $5 billion. Now the figure is 15. And the foreign secretary said in his press conference that there's a possibility it might go up to 25. I think there's one thing about saying it and another thing about actually implementing it. And a lot of that will also depend upon the economics of the game, which are very complicated.
And the economics prima facie, and I underline that term prima facie, don't look inviting or encouraging from our point of view.
Well, I think we would have thought about that before making that statement because there could be other things we could buy.
Well, Russian, for a start, is a lot cheaper, and the transportation is even cheaper still.
Sorry?
Russian oil is a lot cheaper, and the transportation is even cheaper.
Well, I think Russian oil is we have bought a lot when the going was good and all to the good. I think there are problems coming up in terms of sanctions on Russian tankers, on tankers carrying that oil. I think, and I think I honestly am unable to say what the exact economics of this is going to be. But I think the important signal.
With the relationship between America and Russia improving and Marco Rubio's commitment to rebuild that relationship, a commitment he made only late last night, those sanctions on Russia could whittle down to very little very quickly.
In which case, I think we would be happiest. I think if U.S. Russian
we'd still be committed to buying more expensive American oil.
Well, we haven't written that down.
Let me read.
So I think the minute the U.S. Russia relationship improves, the diplomatic space for maneuver improves for India.
Yes, but we'll still be committed to buying more expensive American oil and foregoing the cheaper option available from Russia.
Well, let's see how it goes, how much we actually buy.
Secondly, we don't know whether the way Indian deportees are sent back was raised by Modi when he was talking to Trump. But on Saturday and again on Sunday, they were returned in military planes and the men were handcuffed and shackled. On Saturday, at least, the Sardars who were on the plane were forced to remove their turbans, which would be deeply offensive to the Sikh faith. And now Costa Rica has announced that some illegal Indian immigrants are to be sent there later today, Wednesday. So do you get the feeling that Trump is getting his way regardless of the deep concern and reservation felt in India?
I think in terms of, we have already said from what I read in our statements that anybody who's proven to be Indian and is illegally there will be accepted back. I think what remains to be done.
But how will they be sent?
That's exactly what I'm coming to. I think what remains to be done, possibly, and I don't know, honestly, I don't know how much of it has been done or how much is being done. It needs to be done is to manage the manner in which these people are coming back, to manage the optics of this, to manage the cultural sensitivities of this. You mentioned the turbans, and to make sure that these are something which are acceptable. Now, how far and how quickly we can get this going is important.
But Trump is not managing the cultural sensitivity. But Trump is ignoring the cultural sensitivities. He's ignoring the fact that they're coming back shackled and manacled. He's ignoring the fact that they're coming back in military planes. And now, worst of all, America has negotiated with Costa Rica, and Costa Rica has accepted, and Costa Rica itself has announced that some illegal Indian immigrants will be sent today, Wednesday, the 19th, to Costa Rica. So our guys are being now sent to Costa Rica.
Well, I think this is something which we'll have to take up in possibly in much stronger terms.
And that could be a point of tension in the relationship with Trump and America.
Well, I think it's a given that trade and immigration are going to provide us points of tension in this relationship. And at some stage, these will have to be not just deflected, but handled and managed. And it won't be easy.
Let
But
me
that's
read
the way
one.
the entire world is dealing with issues of Mr. Trump. I can't see a single country, where possibly Russia, because John Bolton, his former NSA, has said that today they are drinking vodka straight from the bottle in Russia. Possibly the Russians are happy about what's happening, but I think every other country will have points of tension, and we will have to make sure that we can get our word in.
Let me raise a third issue with you. For many people, one of the most important items that was raised between Trump and Modi is the possibility that Trump will be willing to sell F-35 planes to India. But the question is, not only are these very expensive, they're also extremely costly to maintain. And Elon Musk has famously described them as a piece of crap that spends more time grounded than in the air. And given India's dependence on French and Russian equipment, not just planes, but a whole range of military equipment, we don't know what conditions America will attach to the sale. So is this really something to rejoice about?
Well, I don't know if this was actually discussed. This was mentioned by Mr. Trump in his press
Absolutely.
conference, and he said that we will offer. But if you listen to our foreign secretary's press conference or press briefing after the visit, he seems to have walked back on this. He's explained that defense platforms are bought after a lot of scrutiny. We haven't even started the proposal. There will have to be RFPs and so on and so forth. So I think we shouldn't jump to the fact that F-35s are waiting to fly out to India.
But it has certainly pleased the heart of several in the media and several in the BJP. You're now deflating that euphoria.
Well, I'm just reading the foreign secretary's press briefing.
Let me end by going back to the impact Trump has made on the world during the last 1 month. If this is how his presidency has begun, how worried are you about the way it will continue and, worst of all, the way it might end?
I think as far as continuing is concerned, I think we have to keep our seatbelts on for the foreseeable future. There will be shocks, there will be reverberations all around the world, including in the bilateral relationship. And I think we will have to ride it out as best as we can. How it will end depends upon what happens during it, Karan. I mean, does he bomb Iran? And then we know how badly this whole thing is going to end. Does he actually send forces to Greenland? Then we know what's going to happen. So I think it all depends to the extent that he follows up on these statements. Only then, 4 years on, which is not a very long time, will we see where the world is.
Is there a sense in which Trump, compared to what was considered normal and acceptable and conventional, compared to all three, is there a sense in which Trump has gone rogue?
Well, this is normal for Trump. This is normal for Trump. I won't say he's gone rogue.
Roguery
I
is
think we
normal
have
for
to
Trump.
we have to come to terms with the fact that the old days are over. We have to come to terms with the fact that the comfort zone that we all lived in has been thrown to the winds. And today it is every man for himself, every country for himself, and there are no rules of the game. There will be rules that will come back. There will be pushbacks, including within the United States. There are already legal challenges to a lot that he's saying, and we have to see where finally this whole thing ends, because otherwise you can't really live by the law of the jungle.
Mr. Sarna, thank you very much for your insights into Trump and your fears as well as your apprehensions about the way in which this presidency could develop. And remember, it still has 3 years and 11 months ahead. I thank you for the time you've given me. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.